Hello, everyone. Welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video Core Pick live stream for today, May 24th. It is Wednesday. It's an 8-game main slate overall. So, see that I am not by myself, just alone today. I do have Woody from Daily Stat Jocks. So, welcome in, Woody. Tell people a little bit about yourself, where they can find you, and all that good stuff. And we'll get a little bit of your input as we go throughout the day as well.
Yeah, man, happy to be here. I know we've been trying to work this out for a couple weeks. Watch your
Mhm.
stream every once in a while, and love the way that you approach the slate. So really happy to be on the stream with you. But yeah, my name is Woody. For those of you that don't know me, you can find me at StatJock Woody on Twitter. DailyStatJocks.com is my site. We have myself and a couple other people over there. We have projections, models, prop betting models, all that good stuff, interactive models, ownership projections, really DFS prop betting, MLB, NBA, WNBA right now, and we're always adding. So if you want to find my work, you can head on over there to dailystatjocks.com. But for right now, I'm just excited to be here, talk some cores, talk some stacks, talk some pitchers. Hopefully help some people out there get a takedown today. What do you say, Coach Craig?
Definitely. So it's been kind of an interesting start to the season. I know you said you had a little bit of success lately. It's been a little bit more hit or miss for me just in general, but typical daily format for me in these videos for anybody that is watching for the very first time. Normally go through the recap, the weather update, core picks over on FanDuel. And then after that, go through the top stacks that I do have on the bottom half of my cheat sheet. My cheat sheet is up. It's on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube community tab. That's 100% free. I got a couple additional notes up on Patreon as well. Anybody that wants to check that out. But with that being said, kind of going into that recap of yesterday's picks. So for myself personally, these are the guys that I had yesterday. So let me bring this tab up on my screen so it's a little bit bigger for myself. So we got Sonny Gray, who is $10,200. I liked him quite a bit yesterday against the Giants. Should be a pretty good strikeout matchup there. Unfortunately, only got 27 points. So in my estimation, I gave him a push yesterday. He was not anybody that really helped your lineup, but he wasn't anybody that really killed it at the same time. Obviously, he was a little bit higher priced pitcher. Obviously, you're wishing that he gets the win, the quality start. You get the extra 10 points there. That's obviously the big bonus, especially from the FanDuel perspective. But, middle of the pack start there. There's obviously better options. So, not anybody that really panned out for us. Rowdy Tellez was that guy. He was kind of on the hot streak. So, a lot of times when Rowdy gets hot, like chasing that. Unfortunately, we only got 3 points out of him yesterday at $2,800. So did give him a push. Is not anybody that really killed your lineup with the zero, but mid-range price there. Hopefully that you were getting a little bit more out of him. Eduardo Escobar was another guy I mentioned yesterday because he had really good history versus Drew Smiley in the past. So did factor that in. He played second base. He hit in the 2-hole. Unfortunately, only ended up with 3 points yesterday. And then Javier Baez, who I liked a lot better when Daniel Lynch was the projected starter, and then it ended up being Michael Mayer starting. Still ended up all right, 2-for-4. Had an RBI yesterday and 9.5 points. Ended up being like the 6th overall shortstop, so it was a pretty decent day for shortstop, but still was a pretty decent play for his price tag. And then Ronald Acuna, he's been one of the hottest hitters in all of baseball for the past 2 weeks, $4,700. You're looking for that double-digit points out of him, but at 9, he's still not anybody that completely killed you, but definitely somebody you would like to be a little bit higher on there too as well. So yesterday, not the greatest day in the world, but that's part of the beauty of MLB DFS. You got it every single day. There is always going to be a little bit of randomness to it, and you can bounce back the very next day as well. So that's just kind of where I was at yesterday. Going to get off this screen. I have RotoWire up as well, which is just one of the sites that I use talking about weather. So bringing this up here, I believe the only games that we're really watching today is the Cubs and the Mets game for rain, Colorado Rockies, and the Miami Marlins. And then the last Kansas City. So those all have potential for delays. Probably not postponements at this point in time, but obviously if anything does change throughout the day, we'll leave that down in the comments and kind of get to it at that point in time. So not going to talk too much about weather, obviously, since we'll be going a little bit longer today just in general with Woody here and talking a little bit about his core as well, some of the stacks that he likes, and a little bit of his site as well. So over to FanDuel. I do apologize. Computer is really lagging today though.
Yeah, man, I'll cut in Hey, you know what? I did have Rowdy Tellez as my home run
You're
pick
good.
yesterday
Oh,
too.
yep.
So I didn't get a chance to watch your stream yesterday, but we ended up on the same page there. And Mr. Rowdy with only one single,
Mm,
I think it was. So that was killer. I think he barreled one, and it ended up
yeah.
being a flyout. I think I saw on the MLB barrel tracker. He hit one like, I don't know,
Mm.
345 or something like that, and flew out to like right center field, and that one hurt my soul. Had him at plus 500 on sports books to
Yeah.
homer last night.
Yeah, he was definitely a guy I like. He had the home run, like I said yesterday, he had the home run in 2 straight days. He's one of those really streaky hitters too. So once he kind of gets on a roll and he's still kind of cheap, you kind of want to get on board when you can too. So there's certain guys like that, especially when their prices are low. It's a good opportunity to jump onto as well. That was a kind of an interesting game last night too, as well.
It's a weird one.
Even I liked the Astros a little bit yesterday. My boy Colin Ray, he's a guy I played against in high school, so he actually pitched really well yesterday too, which hasn't been the great. He's been a spot starter most of his career in the majors and everything else like that. So obviously Altuve getting hurt kind of hurt one of my lineups overall too with the Houston stack and everything else like that. But looks like I was able to stop sharing the other screen and get over now. Fortunately, the computer decided to lag at the wrong time. So do apologize for that for anybody that is watching. Also, for anybody that is watching, if you got any questions for us, feel free to drop them in the live chat. If you're watching on replay, throw it down in the comments and we can get back to you as quickly as possible as well. But kind of what I do have for the court plays today, for anybody that is joining for like the very first time, one pitcher, four hitters. So I like to highlight guys that have decent history in the past or good recent history or a combination of both that kind of appeal to me on the slate for the day. Obviously, some of these guys play on different teams. So if you want to stack them with their team, obviously kind of mix and match a little bit more than what is given here. Obviously, on any day, these are the core plays. These are guys that I just like in general. They have the decent history in the past. If you don't like a specific player, you can always swap it out. You're not held to what I'm talking about on any given day. So with that being said, I got Nestor Cortez, a guy that's been really hit or miss this year. He's got 3 starts with 40 fantasy points. Earlier this year versus Baltimore, he had 31. His starts last year versus Baltimore were actually really good, 68, 49, 51. And obviously he had a really great season last year. $8,300 looks like a pretty good value for a pitcher of Nestor Cortez's upside. Doesn't always mean it's going to pan out, but he's got the decent history versus Baltimore in the past. So definitely a guy that I do like talking about. I don't know if you have any specific opinions on Cortez for today, Woody.
Uh, so he projecting to be the highest owned pitcher on the slate for FanDuel right now.
Mm,
I'm fine with him in cash. I do have a bit of a different opinion in GPPs, but we can get to that when we're talking about the stacks and
mm,
GPP pitchers and stuff. But yeah, throwing him in like a cash core today, I'm fine with him or Senga to start your cash lineup.
And then the one with Senga too is a little bit risky with maybe some of that weather there. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out at this point in time, but um, I would. I don't know, and we'll probably get to this later too, but I think another guy that's kind of interesting on today's slate that's underpriced potentially, but he hasn't pitched up to his caliber this year, Sandy Alcantara, who's $8,900 for today. But obviously, you got the game in Colorado, hasn't pitched quite up to his caliber this year too, as well. So he's one of those guys. I think ownership's going to be interesting on him today, just based on kind of the big name at a cheaper price tag, but hasn't really lived up to expectations and pitching in Colorado, potential weather and all that as well.
Yeah, I got him at about 3% owned right now on FanDuel. So I mean, look, he does not project well for me. I took his under on strikeouts
Mm,
already this morning. I not somebody that I'm gonna like go after. That I'm gonna play aggressively. But like if you're playing multiple lineups, in GPPs, sure, take a shot on Sandy. I mean, you're talking about the reigning NL Cy Young Award winner um,
mm,
at 8,900. So if you want to pivot off of Nestor to get rid of that, to get a pitcher who's more under owned, if you're playing chalkier bats, then sure. But um,
mm,
probably not my top option. I think there's probably another,
mm.
some better options to go. Definitely not someone you want to play in cash, and probably some better options in GPPs. But he is interesting once you get into, third,
Hmm.
fourth, fifth lineup. If you're building by hand or if you're running 150, then yeah, you're gonna probably have some exposure to Sandy today.
Yeah, I mean, if he comes in around 3 and you get to like 6, 7%, I think that's probably a good spot to be at today, honestly.
Definitely, yeah. I don't mind being double the field if he's 3% owned. I
Mhm.
don't. I don't even mind if you're running 150. I don't mind having him in 15 lineups. That would be having 10% Sandy in Colorado is not crazy.
Mhm.
Just not somebody I'm going to be like tripping over myself to get into my lineups today.
Yep, definitely. So kind of the first core hitter that I do have here is Salvador Perez, $3,200. A guy that's been starting to hit the ball pretty well as of late, too. 11 for 46, 2 home runs versus Matthew Boyd in his career. Matthew Boyd's not looked really well for quite some time, if we're being completely honest. Once upon a time, the strikeouts were a little bit there more than they are, but do like Perez quite a bit today. $3,200, not a bad price tag for him. Obviously, you're kind of hoping that he latches onto a little bit more of that power that he's had in recent games as well. Let's see here. And then the next one that I had was Justin Turner. He's $3,000. You can play him at first base. You can play him at third base. He's 18 for 36, 3 home runs versus Tyler Anderson in his career. So really good history there. Been dealing with a little bit of like some knee soreness lately, but been playing the last couple games. Obviously, with that, you just want to make sure that he's in the lineup. Last game of the series, I believe, for them as well. So you just want to make sure that they don't rest him in the final game or anything else like that. But $3,000 definitely could get you some upside there as well. 2 home runs in like last 5 games. So there is power potential to be there. Obviously, he's on the older side at this point in time. So maybe not as much power potential as there was at one point in time, but still, a pretty decent start to the season for him overall. Don't really have too much else to say there. Um, do you like Boston as a stack kind of today, just in general, versus Anderson? We'll get there a little bit
Boston,
more, but
uh, yes. It's kind of in the same spot as Sandy for me. As
yeah.
in, like, I'm not tripping over myself to get them into my lineups, but if you have 10,
Mm,
15, 20% of them in GPPs, that's fine.
mm,
They are one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, seventh highest in 10 plus run percentage in the Sims. So uh, they're in about the same spot as as Seattle for me.
okay.
Seattle and Washington are about in the same spot. The only difference between those three, really, in terms of upside and looking to play them, is Seattle's going to draw a lot more ownership than
Mhm.
Boston, and Boston's going to draw a lot more ownership than Washington.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Boston's going to be an interesting spot today. Obviously, a lot of it's going to depend on who starts, but there's maybe some potential values there. Tyler Anderson hasn't been the greatest to start this year. They did hit him pretty well around the first time around earlier this season too as well. So uh, Turner's the one that really stood out the most in terms of past history. Just versus, I mean, obviously, anytime you're hitting 500 off a pitcher and you got 3 home runs, that's pretty good history just in general. As I keep moving down here for the bats in the outfield, Aaron Judge stands out to me today at $4,500. I didn't look as much as the recent history for him, but versus Tyler Wells in his career, he's 8 for 17. He's got 3 home runs. So some pretty strong upside there. He's all the way back up to $4,500 now. So definitely do like that. Wells has kind of been one of those weird pitchers, though, where he wasn't that great in the past. He's started to look better this year. So he doesn't still have the highest end upside, but Aaron Judge has been a guy that's hit him historically well. So that is somebody that definitely stands out to me just on paper, at least to start the day. And then the last bet I did throw in here was Jorge Soler. He's a guy that's been hitting the ball really well as of late. He's $3,500. The game's at Coors Field, obviously, pending weather and all that good stuff. Going against a rookie pitcher and Carl Kaufman, making his second career start. Wasn't that great in AAA. Wasn't that great in his first career start. So I don't expect too much from him. So I don't mind going to Jorge Soler today. Maybe a little higher price tag than I like to pay for him typically, but he's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late, though. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the core picks that I have. If you go with them, you'll have $12,500 remaining, just over $3,100 per player. So a decent amount of money to mix and match from there. If you wanted to go with those 5 guys in specific, like I said, if you're playing a little bit more in GPPs, probably mix and match and stacking some of these guys in a little bit different manner. Kind of with that being said, if you got any thoughts on any more of these hitters, especially Woody, you can go there. Otherwise, we can talk a little bit more about your kind of core plays for, I believe you're talking about cash today.
Yeah. So just kind of reflecting, I was just plugging the hitters into the search bar on my model while you were going over them, and the three hitters, Perez, Turner, and Soler, all about projected for over 11 points, about 11 and a
Mhm.
half. Perez and Turner are projected for about 10% ownership as of right now, while Soler is up around 35% projected
Ooh,
ownership. And Judge in the mid 20s for projected ownerships with about 14 and a
not
half projected
terrible.
points. Yeah, so I mean, the only chalky one is the guy playing in course, which
Mm,
that's not a surprise at all. But all project really well for me, so on the same page with you there. Uh,
mm,
yeah, in terms of cash, guys, whoops, did not want to do that. Let's see. Matt Carpenter doesn't really have the ownership that I like to suggest for cash guys, but
mm,
highest value on the slate for me, have him projected at 12 points on FanDuel, just 2.6K. Um, Going down the line here, Juan Soto, the Padres are drawing ownership pretty significantly right
yeah.
now. Soto projected at just over 15 points, about 20% owned, 21.8% projected ownership if we're going to get specific there. Brian De La Cruz, and cut from the same mold as your Jorge Soler play.
Mhm,
Out in Coors against a not great pitcher, got him projected for just over 13 points at about 24% ownership. And Fernando Tatis Jr., 50% owned. That's his ownership projection right now on FanDuel. 3.7K projected for about 14 and a half points in the same range as Judge. So those are really the four hitters that stand out on the top of when I go and
mhm,
sort these plays by value. Just the projected FanDuel points divided by the salary. Those are the four that stand out as the mentionable cash plays for building cash lineups on FanDuel. In terms of pitchers, we already went over it a little bit with Cortez or Senga, whichever one you can really afford.
mhm,
Cortez is projected about 3% higher ownership wise. This early in the day, that's really just within the margin of error. It
mhm.
starts to tighten a little bit towards the towards lock, but yeah, really, that's where I'm at in terms of where to start on cash builds. But we can go ahead and dive into some stacks, talk about some leverage, and some ways that we're planning on winning GPPs today, if that's good with you.
Yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'll go over to the bottom half of the cheat sheet that I have up on the YouTube community tab. I will mention two. Matt Carpenter, who you did mention, he is 8 for 28 in his career versus Trevor Williams. So it's not like crazy success, but he's hit him decently well in the past. It's like a 286. I believe he's got like 2 home runs or some too as well. I did see that when I was doing some of my research yesterday, I guess, technically.
It's a large sample size,
So let me
man.
stop sharing that.
Not many guys see a pitcher 28 times in their career.
Hmm. And let's see. Let me just get the right tab pulled up here now since we got about 5 of them open. So
Yeah, I hear you,
hopefully
man.
it's
I have
pulling.
about
Everything's going a
35
little bit
tabs
slower today
myself.
for whatever reason, but
I'm sure that's on me.
mm,
I'm sure it's my fault. StreamYard just doesn't like me.
eh, nope. Yeah, I'll just talk then, since it's not pulling up the right tab anyways. But kind of the ones that I had in the bottom half of my cheat sheet, and a lot of like the guys that you talked about is kind of like the core picks too. I looked a little bit at De La Cruz. He's been hitting pretty well as of late. Fernando Tatis was in my cheat sheet as well. And he's going to be popular just because he can play shortstop. He can play outfield as well. I think San Diego's probably going to end up being pretty popular going against Trevor Williams. He's pretty hittable most of the time. Um, but kind of the ones that I did have, I like the Yankees going against Tyler Wells. Like I said, with Tyler Wells, it's kind of that hit or miss with him. Like he hasn't been that great in the past, but he showed better this year. He added some type of pitch. I don't remember what type of pitch it was this year where he's been a little bit better, throwing that a little more often and everything. But Aaron Judge is kind of the main cat. He's the one that's really hit him the best in the past. Anthony Rizzo has some success against him too. So if you're looking at the Yankee stacks, that's probably where I would start with those two guys. Obviously, a lot of volatility to who's in their lineup daily, day in and day out at this point in time. I think I threw Gleyber Torres in the cheat sheet too because second base was a little bit barren. He's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late. Like I said before, I like the Red Sox going against Tyler Anderson. They hit him pretty well last time. There could be some potential values there. I threw Rob Refsnyder in the bottom half of my cheat sheet for $2,500. He had a really good opportunity versus him the last time, 2 for 3, I believe it was. I've seen some projections of him hitting third at $2,500 today. I don't think he's probably going to hit third, but if he does,
Hey,
that looks like pretty
they
reasonable value.
pencil him in hitting third against lefties
Mm-hmm.
pretty often. Yeah, I mean that's why he always seems to pop in projections against left-handed pitching because he has
Yeah.
pretty good numbers against lefties, and for whatever reason, the Red Sox think that he becomes like I don't know, Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve or something against left-handed pitchers.
Yeah.
They plug him in at third, but yeah, he usually pops pretty well in the
Yeah.
projections when a lefty's
I
starting
wish he
against
had
him.
a little bit more versatility since in real life he's a guy that can play a lot of different positions, but FanDuel he's just outfield eligible. But $2,500, you're not gonna get many of those guys hitting third in a lineup that's at least middle of the pack. They've been decent at times this year. Obviously, Boston's really hit or miss team this year, though. The Mariners, which you kind of talked about a little bit, they're going against Waldichuk. Waldichuk hasn't been that great in the past. Left-handed pitcher. Seattle's got some guys that hit left-handed pitching typically pretty well, but the other day I had Teoscar Hernandez, who usually hits left-handed pitching pretty well. Unfortunately, he goes over 5, and the rest of the team does everything. But that's kind of how it goes sometimes. And then I like stacking the Marlins against Kauffman at Coors Field. We'll see how popular that ends up being. Maybe some ways that we can get different in that lineup in terms of projected ownership. Obviously, talked about Soler, talked about De La Cruz. Obviously, weather concerns could play a factor in that game once again, though.
Yeah. So just to touch on something you just said, Waldichuk going against Seattle. Seattle grades out pretty highly in terms of stacking for me.
Mm,
The Sims are spitting out them scoring 10 plus runs 18.83% of the time, under 5 runs only 47.4% of the time. So obviously, over 50% of the time, you're talking about a team that's going to at least allow you to compete in GPPs
mm,
by scoring over 5 runs. Um, but a pitcher that grades out well for GPPs for me actually is Waldichuk.
mm.
Now I'm not going to sit here and say bet all your money on Waldichuk tonight or
No.
anything along those lines. But if you're building multiple lineups and you're stacking Seattle, it's one of those situations where I really like a hedge lineup.
Mm,
Um, because if you're stacking Seattle, you should not be pairing Seattle with Miami with a pitcher that's drawing some kind of ownership. You're just not going to have the leverage there.
mm,
Um, so Waldichuk is one of those where, and once again, I I will preface this by saying if you're stacking Seattle in a different lineup, right? Waldichuk is one of those where he's projected to be about 1% owned. Seattle's
mm,
projected to have a good amount of ownership on him. Um, he's cheap, so you can go ahead and stack Miami with Waldichuk and a team like San Diego,
mm,
uh, a team like the Dodgers, um, a team like well, you're not going to need it, but one of my favorite stacks today is Baltimore going up against Cortez, and that's another situation
mm,
where you can kind of hedge if you're
mm,
playing multiple lineups. But just to kind of get into the teams that project to score 10 runs the most in the StatJock simulations, it's Miami, Baltimore, San Diego, and the Dodgers. So uh, I really do like that pairing of Miami and Baltimore because there is going to be ownership on Cortez. You can
mm.
turn that around and have immediate leverage. Go ahead and throw a pitcher like we're going to need to save some money if we're stacking Miami and Baltimore. So probably talking. Oof, yeah, that's a tough price range though.
Yeah, I'll just say too. If you're stacking Baltimore, I don't know what you have Adley Rushman projected for, but he is 5 for 8 in his career versus Cortez, so that's one of the better guys in their lineup against Cortez.
Yeah, Rutschman projected for about 11.
Mm,
Mountcastle 11.72. Santander 12 and a half today. So Yeah, I'm with you on Rutschman for what it's
Mm,
worth. That's just it's an interesting situation, Cortez versus Baltimore,
mhm,
because th- under 5 runs in the Sims about 50% of the time. So 50% of the time, that stack is not going to take you to the promised land. Absolutely, whether it's a main stack, whether it's a secondary stack like a 3-man on DraftKings, or if you're going 4-3-1 on FanDuel. But the 10 plus run percentage is up there with Miami.
mhm,
Miami is about 2% higher in the 10 plus run percentage. So if you're looking, large field stuff,
mhm.
looking to get off ownership, or looking for a team to pair with Miami, that's my favorite way to go today.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's like a lot of interesting pitchers on this thing because there's not like the one standout dominant guy that like. I think that's why a lot of people go to Cortez is just because he's kind of cheap today, or that's why a lot of people will go to him. Um, Obviously, he's had some success versus Baltimore, but it's been a rough year. Where do you land on like Bryce Miller on a slate like tonight, where it's like him and I think Bryce Elder's on this slate too, right? Where they're both
Yeah,
like 10K plus.
Elders on this slate. I don't like either of them.
Mhm.
I mean, here's where I'm at. There is a large chunk of pitchers: Senga, Stroman, Cortez, Elder, Waldachuk, Miller, Gonsolin, Alcantara, and Paxton that projects within 5 points of each other.
Mhm.
Um, which goes to what you were saying in terms of there's not any standout pitchers tonight. There's not a Spencer Strider on this
Mhm.
slate. There's not a someone like McClanahan who's on the early slate. There's just not that guy.
Mhm.
But a lot of these prices are pricing these pitchers like they are that guy. That's just how the FanDuel pricing algorithm works.
Mhm.
Um, so I like the idea of going mid range or a little bit lower. Um, Miller, if you can afford him, then yeah,
Mhm.
just because of his upside, projecting for about 14% ownership right now. So if you can afford him rather than Cortez or Senga,
Mhm.
I'd say he's probably the better play out of the three in GPPs if you need that leverage. If you're already playing a low owned stack, then I would probably prefer Senga saving the money and getting that little bit extra juice in projected FanDuel points.
Mhm. And Senga's been one of those kind of interesting guys. Like the first time he goes against a team, it's like it either goes really well and he strikes out a lot of guys with the ghost fork because nobody knows how to hit it, or they just kind of hit him. Like there's no in between. So he's like the perfect almost GPP play once again.
Yeah, and his problem has been walks. He'll walk the bases loaded and then strike out the side. He's one of
Mhm.
those guys this year. Um, and really, the last couple of weeks, we've seen the Cubs' offense kind of devolve.
Mhm.
They got out to a hot start, and recently they've been striking out like they're the Oakland A's. um, and so I think that's really what my projections are picking up on,
Mhm.
and why they do like Senga as much as they do right now, is just because of that strikeout upside.
Mhm.
We can actually go to the prop betting model uh,
Let me see.
and see kind of where he's finishing uh, in terms of strikeouts and walks.
Let me see here.
So yeah, Senga over 5.5 Ks 43% of the time. Over 2.5 walks 62% of Sims.
Yeah.
So like you said, I'll I'll go circle back to what you said. That kind of makes him a good GPP play, just because if he can get out of those situations where he's walking people, then the
Mhm.
strikeout upside's there. On a slate where there's not a ton of strikeout upside. If he can't get out of those situations where he's walking people, he's in trouble. But uh, more than 2.5 hits allowed only 29% of the time in my Sims. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you're looking for a high left on base percentage.
Mhm. Well, I mean, even when you like look at the Cubs lineup too, they got off to the decent start to the year. Bellinger's on IL. He was kind of one of the big reasons why they got off to it. Morel's killing the ball, but he also strikes out like 36% of the time. So, or it's right around there. It's probably varied a little bit over the last couple of days, but Patrick Wisdom's always going to strike out. You know, you got a couple contact hitters with Nico Horner. If Madrigal plays, he's a contact hitter, but most of these other guys are willing to strike out more times than that.
Yeah, and it's just like it's looking at this. I'm on the MLB prop model right now and
Mm,
looking at the percentages of like over a certain number. So, really, what it's telling me is what his line should be:
mm,
5 strikeouts, 3 walks, uh, 2 hits allowed, and 2 earned runs over 5 innings. Um, or 5 1/3 innings. That's basically what I'm taking from this, and it's not great upside, but once again, we go back to who does have great upside on this slate. Um, and really,
mm,
that's where we started with your question about Miller.
mm.
Um, he probably is one of the highest upside guys. It's just the median projection for him against what is it, against Oakland today?
Against Oakland, yeah. Who
Yeah,
that was his first career start too, where he was like no hitter through what was it, like 5 or 6 innings too.
yeah. That was a good back and forth between him and who was throwing for Oakland.
Mason
Oh,
Miller. They both
yeah.
had like
Also
no
had
hitters through like four or something like that.
that was a fun game.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, if you can afford Miller, the upside's there in GPPs. He's not going to be as high owned as the other two guys that we were just talking about, Senga and Cortez. Yeah, I mean, I've basically just talked myself into him over the past couple minutes, but
yeah,
um,
it's just you have to figure out where you're going to save the money at too at the same time, honestly.
yeah, and I mean, probably what you're going to end up doing there is stack the bottom of the Marlins lineup or go with a team like Baltimore and some
Mm,
cheaper bats from Seattle.
mm,
Um, and just fade course if you're doing that, which
mm.
you're talking about a pretty large field build there. Just looking at ownership alone.
Or even if you get to him, get some like cheaper Boston bats, get like the popular Padres still or something like that. Like there's a way you could go that way too and get it, I think.
Yeah, and especially if you're talking about Boston and San Diego, you're talking about two guys. Carpenter's probably going to be hitting fifth. There's a
Mhm.
cheapie that you can include in your stack, and Reif Snyder's probably going to be hitting third. So another cheap guy you can include in your stack. So um, yeah, I mean you could get there. I
Mhm.
just don't think that he's as a pitcher in this matchup, and I know what happened the first time he threw against him, but
No, you're
in
good.
this pitcher, in this matchup, with the pitcher that he is, I don't think that he's worth 10.9K. Um, but as a GPP play, like I said, I've basically been talking myself into him for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, you what about Tony Gosselin? He's just kind of like 9K is not a bad price tag. Like matchup against Atlanta, like it's not the best, but like in the past, he really hasn't done too bad against Atlanta. It's just kind of been middle of the pack. Obviously, he's had that scoreless streak going on. He's been better since he's came back. Obviously, Dodgers are always kind of weird about his pitch count too. They never let him touch or sniff 100, so it's kind of one of those things. He's a guy that doesn't strike out a lot of bats either. But like on a slate like today, that mid range, it's not like I'm not sure exactly where your ownership comes in on him, but he feels like a guy that could maybe a little bit underowned today.
Same as Waldachuk,
Mm,
projected for about 1% owned. And I mean, it's because he's playing against Atlanta and Atlanta.
mm,
That offense is scary, and we're talking about in the same price range. Alcantara at 8.9. Cortez even lower at
mm,
8.3. So yeah, I mean he's worth a mention. And really, what you're looking for if you're playing Gonsolin in a GPP is no pitcher hits their upside today, which
Hmm.
we've been kind of talking about how there's not like that one explosive pitcher. If there was that one explosive pitcher on the slate, I would be vehemently against playing Gonsolin, but um, there's not. And TEXP's suggested tournament exposure metric on the site does
Hmm.
like him a little bit, wants him in about 8% of lineups.
Sounds
So
about right.
yeah, above the field, uh, I don't mind him. Like I said, like what you're hoping for there is Senga, Stroman, Cortez, Elder, and Alcantara. Not so much Alcantara. You don't have to worry about him as much.
Yeah.
Really, what you're hoping for there: Senga, Stroman, Cortez, all don't do well
Hmm.
by their standards. You're probably hoping that those three pitchers put up under 30 FanDuel points today.
Hmm.
And in that case, you're looking, your process worked with Gonsolin in your lineup.
Hmm. Yeah. I think he's just an interesting guy to me today. It's if it was another slate, maybe we're having a different story. But I think I'll probably end up being over the field on him just in general. With, you know, he's just a safe guy, more or less.
Yeah. And what makes him so much more interesting, I'm on the same page with you. If it was a different slate, I would be, I would not be happy with playing him. But going against Atlanta, it really is just driving his ownership through the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And Atlanta's ownership, Atlanta's actually drawing some ownership in these early ownership projections, like 17% Acuna. I mean, it's nothing, I'm not going to sit here and
Wow.
say Atlanta is the chalk stack of the day or anything like that, but Riley, 10%, like the hitters are definitely more owned than Gonsolin will be. So, yeah, I mean, if you're plugging Gonsolin in there, you're looking for those three pitchers to probably not score 30 FanDuel points, and your process worked. That's where I'm at with that. And now I've probably talked myself into playing Bryce Miller and Gonsolin
Mm-hmm.
today.
I think it's good to mix and match a little bit more today, especially with no real true standouts. Plus, I think even like when you talk about Gonsolin, like people talk about this Atlanta lineup, but like, yes, Acuna is hitting the crap out of the ball. Riley's been kind of slow lately. That's why his price tag's where he's at. Murphy's been better as of late. They got there. They're healthy now, but like half the lineup still isn't hitting.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those lineups where it could be 4 runs in the fifth inning real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like it's all of a sudden your pitcher's cruising along against him, and no runs allowed, 4 or 5 strikeouts going into the fifth. You're sitting there thinking, man, this could really turn out well for me. I got a low owned bat against, or I got a low owned arm against the Braves, and all of a sudden 4 or 5 runs in the fifth, and your pitcher's yanked later because you had Acuna, Olson, Riley, and Murphy
Mm-hmm.
coming up, and or even you walk Arcia at the bottom of that lineup, and Acuna hits a 2-run home run.
Yep.
It's one of those situations where it's like
Yeah.
they can just jump on you so fast, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't be scared to play an arm against them.
Yeah. If you can get
Because
six, I think more or less, if you can get 6 innings, the quality starting to win out of Gosselin and get 38 points at him, that's not a bad day.
yeah, that would be an impressive start for Gonsolin to go
Mm-hmm.
6 with a Q start and a win.
Mm-hmm.
His the 6 innings is what worries me a little bit there
Yeah.
because, like you said, the Dodgers just they do not let his pitch count ride up there at all,
Mhm.
really ever.
They're like 96, and that's it pretty much for him most of the time.
hmm Yeah, so I mean, to stretch him out, I could see him going 5, 5 1/3, and then them yanking him for a
Mhm.
matchup.
Yeah.
I would venture to guess that they don't want him seeing the lineup flip over for a third time.
Mhm. And we'll just have to see how it all plays out today for sure. But definitely some different angles of stack. Is there any like underrated hitters that you want to mention before we get out of here?
Underrated hitters. Let's see. Whoops, that would be pitchers. I was like, that's not a hitter. Kelbert Ruiz, Matt Carpenter, I already mentioned him. Um, Anthony Santander,
Mm-hmm.
Chad Wallach. Chad Wallach, if he gets the start today. Um, Dude has been flying under the radar, but his expected stats are pretty sweet so far this year, and he is min price on FanDuel. So, look, I'm not suggesting you stack the Angels. I did not bring them up as a stack at all, but if you need that min price one off
Mm-hmm.
and can afford to sacrifice your utility spot or your catcher first base spot, Chad Wallach. That is the uh, very, very deep play today from me.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see what guys end up being like real low price. Like yesterday, there was Corey Dickerson at like flat K, 2K, and he even had decent history in the past for his Darvish too. I'm like, well, he's not in the core, but if you're looking for somebody that's dirt cheap, he's out there.
Yeah, there's a few guys today that are just going extremely underowned. And Ruiz with Oakland, every
Mm,
day he's underowned. Like he puts up, 10, 12 fantasy points seemingly every single day and just goes like
mm,
that's another one where I'm not going to be stacking Oakland, but if you're looking for another one off like that,
mm.
there you go.
Yeah, well, it's just the stolen bases is now too with him. He was one of the fastest guys in the minors, stole a ton of bases the last couple of years, and then comes to the big leagues and is like, well, Oakland's like, well, we're not really playing for much, so you might as well just run whenever you get the chance.
Yeah, and his ability to get on base has been surprising too this season.
Mm,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say that I followed him a ton. I didn't, but like
mm,
I was not expecting the combination of on base percentage plus steals, and you know even even his slugging is better than I would have expected this year.
mhm,
So he's just been one that just consistently flies under the radar because he's in that Oakland lineup. But every single day, it seems like if you plug him
mm.
in, you know what you're getting out of him in your FanDuel lineup.
Yep, definitely for sure. But I think that's pretty much what we got at this point in time. Obviously, this ended up being pretty long. So definitely do appreciate everyone that did tune in. If you're watching on replay, definitely appreciate you as well. If you have any more additional questions related to MLB DFS, be sure to leave them down in the comments. Get back to you as quickly as possible. As I typically do, if there's any weather updates throughout the day, I'll throw it down there in the comments. Try to get as many starting lineups out down there as well. Obviously, be sure to check out daily statjocks.com, Woody's site over there for all the good stuff there, whether it's MLB, you said WNBA now, we got some NBA up there too. And, for the price tag that you're offering, one of the better values out there. So, uh, just in general with all the stuff that you are offering. So, try it out, taking advantage of that and see how it works out for you guys. Definitely would recommend it. It's something that I'm going to mess around a little bit more with myself, probably starting next week when I have a little bit extra time to just kind of, especially as I play more lineups when I do have the extra time now too. So that's kind of the hardest part right now with baseball season going on myself personally coaching and everything. But definitely do appreciate having you on once again, Woody. If there's anything else you'd like to say before we get out of here, definitely be sure to do that as well.
Yeah, just thanks for having me on.
Mm,
Appreciate everybody watching. I love doing these live stream type setups and looking to do more in the future. So hopefully we'll get something set up where this becomes
mm.
more of a regular thing. But I really enjoyed it, man. I love the setup you have here and really appreciative for you having me on here. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you having you on. If you have any other like additional questions for us, like I said, down in the comments. My Twitter is at Coach Craig Sport. Woody's is what was it, Daily Stat Woody?
It's
Or,
Stat Jock
or Stat
Woody.
Jocks Woody.
Stat
There we
Jock
go.
Woody. Yep.
Yep. So definitely be sure to follow him as well if you haven't followed him already. Good information out there. Like I said, the site is one of the better ones, for multiple sports out there. It's only $20 a month, which less than $1 a day. So you're getting a lot of good information there. His model, is taking in 1.5 million things, it seems like, and putting it all together and doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you guys as the day moves along. Obviously, with baseball, there's so many different things that can happen. Having a model that can run multiple simulations and everything else like that and give you maybe little edges on other people, the casual fan and everything else like that is definitely something that is highly warranted. But with that being said, if you're checking out for the very first time, you enjoy the content here, be sure to subscribe. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS right now, mainly MLB DFS, USFL DFS. Video will be up on Friday for that as well. So definitely be sure to check that out if that's something you're into. If you haven't already done so, hit that notification bell down below so you see every time that we do go live for a live stream, pre-recorded video, anything else like that. Definitely do appreciate it. And then with that being said, definitely do appreciate everyone that did take the time to tune in live, whether you're watching live or on replay. Definitely means a lot to me. No, it definitely means probably a lot to Woody as well. So definitely appreciate that. Hopefully each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.